Before we get creepy, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Let's get into the video. Enjoy. Number 5. Premonition. A few years ago, I sold my car to the uncle of one of my friends who was a mechanic and frequently bought cars to fix them up before reselling. I bought a different car from someone else and drove it home and parked it in my driveway. The next morning, I woke up from the most realistic nightmare of my life. In the dream, my husband and I had gotten into my car to drive to work like normal. He drops me off on his way, so we only have to use one vehicle. And we got in a gruesome car accident that left us both thrown from the car and horribly mangled on the side of the road. I've had bad nightmares before, but nothing remotely like this. I felt like it was a premonition and pleaded with my husband until he agreed to take the day off with me. I've never done anything so dramatic before, but I was that convinced that something was wrong with my new car and would be terribly injured if we drove in it again. Even just sitting at home, I felt so much anxiety, I was nauseous for the whole morning. My husband got the idea for me to call my friend's uncle, to whom I had just sold my previous car to see if he'd do us a favor and come check it out and confirm that it was safe to drive. I called my friend to see if her uncle was around. She sounded upset, like she hadn't expected it to be me who called. Instead of asking for her uncle, I asked him why she seemed upset. I came to learn that her uncle had just been in a really bad car accident in my old car, where he had been thrown from the vehicle and injured horribly. Number 4. Screams in the dark. I used to live in a very beautiful but very rural community in Appalachia. I grew up there and it felt safe to me, so going on night hikes with my girlfriend was a normal thing. I had a gun back in my truck, but I didn't bring it with me because my only concern was bears, and they weren't around that area. We'd gone on this hike many nights before when the sky was clear and it wasn't that dark out, but for some reason we both felt uneasy on this night. I just kept hearing a little voice in my head saying, "Turn back." When we were about 3/4 of the way to our usual summit, I couldn't take it anymore, and I told her I thought we should turn around. Later, she would tell me she'd been feeling apprehensive all night too. She was as eager as I was to get the heck out of there. No sooner had we turned when we heard a blood-curdling scream in the middle of the dark. A second scream broke out in another location, then a third, then a fourth, then a fifth. All around us, we could hear people hidden in the woods, only a few feet away from us, screaming at the top of their lungs in the dark. We ran out of there as fast as we could, totally full of adrenaline. I scoured the local paper that entire summer, looking for anything that would make sense of what we'd experienced, but no one reported anything weird happening in those woods that summer. Number 3. Last text. The day my mother passed unexpectedly, I woke up to a text from her that said, "I love you too." It wouldn't be abnormal for me to have texted her, "I love you," and she responded with a "I love you too," but I hadn't talked to her at all the previous day. I had no memory of texting her recently that I loved her, and my message history confirmed I hadn't sent a text like that. My sister called and told me of her passing before I was able to respond to her, but I like to think that a phantom text from me to her did exist, and that she died shortly after being comforted by a reminder of my love for her. Number 2. The Man in the Window. I used to have a weekly overnight babysitting job for a couple who frequently spent nights in another nearby city caring for one of their ailing parents. It was an easy gig because they only had one kid who was 8 years old and pretty independent. I just played with him for a few hours and got him ready for bed, and then got paid for another 14 hours while I watched TV, raided their fridge, and slept. The only thing I hated about the job, however, was the house. It was a somewhat modern house in the country, and it had big open windows, and the style was such that there wasn't any curtains I could close. I just had to watch TV and live with the anxiety of knowing someone outside could be watching me, and I have no idea. One night, I was sitting down in the living room, and I thought I heard a noise, so I turned the volume on the TV down. Sure enough, what I heard was a slight tap, tap, tap. I looked around and didn't see anything out of place, so I assumed it was a noise from a tree or something outside. But every time I turned the volume back up, I heard that same tap, tap, tap. Finally, I turned the TV off altogether and started walking around the house. As my eyes adjusted to the darker room, I saw a man outside the window, fingernail pressed to the glass, making that tap, tap, tap noise and smiling at me. I freaked out and sprinted upstairs to check on the kid, but the worst part was that there wasn't a phone upstairs, so I eventually had to creep back downstairs to grab a phone and call the police. I tried to avoid looking at the window, but I snuck a glance and he was still there, just watching me calmly. I locked myself and the kid into his bedroom and waited for the police. They never found any trace of someone around the house, and I suspect they thought I was some kid playing a prank, but I know the person I saw was a full-grown man, and that he just stood there, enjoying the fear that he caused me to feel. Number 1, unexpected company. I went to my mom's house in the middle of the day to pick up a sweater I'd left there a few days earlier. She was at work, but I often popped in to pick up something or leave her some vegetables from my garden for her while she was at work. When I walked in the door, there was an elderly man seated at her breakfast table. He looked up and smiled at me, and I assumed my mother was home from work that day and entertaining a neighbor for breakfast. I smiled politely and said hello and explained I was just grabbing a sweater. I then walked out the door and sent a text to my mom on my way to work saying I'm sorry to have missed her and interrupted her breakfast company. She called me back, freaking out because she was at work and had no idea who was in her house.
Thanks for watching.